Hey, Dan.
Hey, Mike.
Class?
Yeah, are you?
Yeah, I'm excited for Sukkot. Oh yeah, you heard about the rabbi across the road?
No. Why?
I'll tell you after class.
Let's settle down, students. Class is about to begin. As you all know, with the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur behind us, Sukkot is fast approaching, which means that we have lots to talk about and prepare before it begins.
But Morris Saperstein, retired from celebrating the New Year and from repenting on Yom Kippur.
I understand you feel that way now, but I have a feeling that after I tell you the joyous story of Sukkot, you'll have a change of heart.
But my mom told me it's all about loving God.
Well, she's right. The holiday started years ago when the children of Israel left Egypt after the Exodus and lived in the wilderness. They wandered through the desert for 40 years in search of their homeland, and this holiday is all about reenacting that journey.
Wow, that sounds really awful, wandering in the desert all those years.
While you could definitely look at it that way, the Jewish people traditionally think of it another way. Sukkot is a honeymoon with God because God was right there with the Jews as they journeyed, bringing them pillars of fire and manna from heaven. This is seen as a joyous time where the people got to be with God out in nature. And remember, they have just left the enslavement of Pharaoh in Egypt, and we're grateful to be a free people. Just as Jacob mentioned, we might feel tired from the somber reflection of the high holidays, but celebrating Sukkot helps us shift to a happiness in display of thanks for the earth's bounty.
But were the Jews happy being out in nature?
Oh yes, very, very happy. Students, this is an agricultural holiday and is one of the 3 pilgrimage festivals. In ancient times, almost everything was structured around the time of the harvest, when it was being planted and when it was being gathered. Remember, they didn't have grocery stores like we do now, and the ancient people thanked God for bountiful harvest. Like I said, this holiday is about trusting God to provide for the Jewish people.
They were out in nature and were happy about it, but where did they sleep?
Great question. This is actually where we get the common name for this holiday, from the dwellings that the ancient Jews inhabited called Sukkot. Sukkot in the plural, Sukkah in the single. In Leviticus 23, there is a biblical verse, "Ye shall dwell in booths 7 days." The reason this commandment is given so that the future generations may know that I, God, made the children of Israel dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt.
So why do they call them booths and not sukkahs in the Bible?
Another wonderful question. Booth is just another word for sukkah, and they act as a visible symbol of God's love and kindness. However, this structure is meant to be temporary because the Jews were on foot and moving around on their journey, going where God took them. It is supposed to be like the temporary dwellings that agricultural workers lived in during the autumn harvest season. Yet they are flimsy enough that Jews in the modern world are reminded that a time in their history where they were dependent on God, a God who nurtured and cared for his people.
But I have a tent in my backyard. Does that count as a sukkah?
Another good question, but no. There are very specific characteristics of this sukkah, and they must be built according to the ancient rules that Jews have followed for centuries. It's best to start building as soon as you can after Yom Kippur, because there's just so much to do. But before we can make our sukkah together, let us recite the blessing. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has kept us in light and has preserved us and enabled us to reach this season. First, we know that the number of walls related in the sukkah is related to the Hebrew words that form the word, samech, kaf, and hey. It is not completely 4 walls, but rather is open to welcome nature into the space. Second, the roof must be made of organic material so that the stars can shine through. Remember, we're celebrating a connection with nature. The roof cannot, however, be made of anything still connected to the roof. So things like tree limbs that are still attached don't really count. And once the sukkah is built, we say the blessing again together. Let's practice. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments and has commanded us to dwell in the sukkah. Very nice. Finally, once the structure is built, we're encouraged to decorate it however we please. The sukkah here at David J. Levy Jewish Center usually has strung macaroni and streamers. But make the sukkah outside your home your very own. Do in the sukkah as you would in your own home.
Cool. How long does this holiday last?
7 days, and is comprised of the beginning, Yom Tov, and the subsequent days, Hol HaMoed. Since we're not in Israel, and instead we live in the diaspora, which is anywhere outside of Israel, we celebrate this holiday for 8 days. The temporary structure of the sukkah remains standing for all of the 8 days because, as you will learn, we'll need it to celebrate this very important holiday.
Okay, so once the Jews build the sukkah, what do they do in it?
Well, on Sukkot, just like on other religious holidays, there are commandments. For Sukkot, there are 3 main ones that we must follow. First, as we have already learned, we're commanded to live in the sukkah for the duration of the holiday, which is 8 days. Dwelling in the sukkah forces us to remove ourselves from material things and instead turn to a simpler life where we can refocus priorities on the affirmations of the spiritual kind. We are out in nature and reminded of a time in Jewish history where the entire nation was homeless and wandering. The second commandment is to take up the lulav and the etrog and recite the appropriate blessing during the day. This is the mitzvah of the Arba Minim. The lulav and etrog are also called the 4 species and are actually a palm branch and a citron. I'll show you them here on the board as I've drawn them. You see, this is the lulav and this is the etrog. These can be seen as the parts of the human body as well, with the palm branch looking like the human spine, the myrtle leaves looking like the eyes, and the willow the lips. The citron, or the etrog, is also seen as the human heart or the human mind. Hidur mitzvah means literally beautifying the commandments. The more beautiful you pick your fruit to be, the better you celebrate the holiday. So as you can see, the ones I've drawn are very, very beautiful. We are commanded to hold them in our hands and shake them, and this is used at 2 points during our ceremony.
But people look so funny when they shake them.
Yes, well, there is a method to the shaking. First, you take the lulav and the spine facing towards you and pick up the etrog in your left hand. The etrog must have the stem, which is called the piton, and it should be pointing downwards. You shake them east, west, north, south, heavenward, and ground of being. The third commandment of this holiday is to rejoice in its celebration. There is an old adage that says, if it's raining enough to make you uncomfortable eating in the sukkah, there is no reason to follow the rules to the point where you spoil your soup. The sukkah is considered to be a symbol of joy, not a source of burden. And on this holiday, unlike on other holidays, rabbis encourage us not to go beyond the letter of the law and do the mitzvah anyway, but rather, the mitzvah is enjoying the sukkah itself.
But isn't rain supposed to be a good thing on this holiday?
That's an interesting point. Traditionally, on Sukkot, there is a prayer for rain called Tefillat Geshem. Since the holiday has crucial agricultural groundings, the withholding of rain is regarded in the Bible as a punishment from God. This prayer usually happens on the last day, which is the 8th day of the holiday.
I'm so excited for Sukkot. When everyone just gathers together and has fun.
I'm so glad to see your enthusiasm. But remember, it's not just the guests that we see that are important, but also the symbolic guests that we invite into our sukkah.
What, like ghosts?
Not exactly. These guests are Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Aaron, and David. And they are the forebears of our religion, and were wanderers themselves.
What about girls, Maura?
Well, in recent times, matriarchs have been included as well. Sarah, Rachel, Rebecca, Leah, Miriam, Abigail, and Esther. Overall, this is meant to add to the mystical significance of the holiday and connect us with our very important Jewish past. Now, students, class is over, but when we meet next week, I want to hear all about how you celebrated the commandments, rejoiced with your families, and bring in pictures to show me how your sukkahs looked.
Yay!
Yay!